Yes.
Yes, I hear them. Okay. Ready?
Yep.
Okay. We will call to order the Grand Traverse County Board of Commissioners Equalization Meeting for Tuesday, April 10th, 2018. Will please rise for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh, roll call, please, Bonnie.
Klaus,
Here.
Johnson,
Here.
Mayor,
Here.
Crawford,
Here.
and Commissioners Gore Follett and Lathrop and Wheelock are all excused tonight.
Okay, thank you. This is our chance for first public comment. Please read the rules, Bonnie.
Any person shall be permitted to address a meeting of the Board of Commissioners which is required to be open to the public under the provision of the Michigan Open Meetings Act. Public comment shall be carried out in accordance with the following board rules and procedures. Any person wishing to address the board shall state his or her name and address. No person shall be allowed to speak more than once on the same matter, excluding time needed to answer commissioners' questions, if any. The chairperson shall control the amount of time each person shall be allowed to speak, which shall not exceed 3 minutes. The chairperson may, at his or her discretion, extend the amount of time any person is allowed to speak. Public comment will be solicited during the 2 public comment periods noted in Rule 5.4, Order of Business. However, public comment will generally be received at any time during the meeting regarding a specific topic currently under discussion by the board. Members of the public wishing to comment should raise their hand or pass a note to the clerk in order to be recognized and shall not address the board until called upon by the chairperson. Please be respectful and refrain from personal or political attacks.
Thank you. Anybody for public comment? I'm looking at you. Okay, just checking. Thank you. So we'll move on to equalization. We have the presentation of our annual report as required by MCL 211.34.
So this year we're gonna do a little different format, and we thought, meaning Nate, Dean, Jim, and I thought it would be a good idea to first talk about some of the general principles of Michigan Headley Prop A, how that affects equalization. Jim will then give his report, and then Dean's going to go over some of these charts here that we put up on the easels, just to explain to the board, the 4 of you, I wish all 7 were here, but nonetheless, the 4 of you, so what effect does property values ultimately relate to tax revenue, which relates to the county's revenue and the county's budget. So I'm going to get started with the first part. I'm just going to take just 10 minutes just going over some of the basics, and please, if you fall asleep, I won't get offended.
No.
Because some of this stuff is like watching wallpaper dry. No offense, Kim. And this is not easy stuff too. So I've tried to take some complex concepts and tried to simplify it as best as I could, so that the commissioners and the public just get down to the brass tacks and the principles behind Headley and Prop A. So with that, I'm going to start out with the obvious, and that is we receive most of our revenue through personal real property taxes. In counties, more so than townships, cities, and villages, counties obtain most of their revenues through property taxes. Why that is? Mostly it has to do with revenue sharing. Revenue sharing in Michigan, we do get revenue sharing, but cities, villages, and townships, they get the bulk of revenue sharing. So they get that little extra money that counties don't get. So we're going to first talk about the Headley Amendment. And what is the Headley Amendment? And just some history for you. It was adopted in 1978, authored by Richard Headley. And it's an amendment to the state constitution. And there actually were several amendments involved, but the main section is section 9, paragraph 31. That's involved. And what Headley did, first of all, it created these categories of property. You have true cash value, the fair market value of the property, and you have state equalized value. So Headley started by using those terms when we're describing property values. Then it says state equalized value is half of true cash value. So if I have, for simplicity purposes, if I have a house, hypothetically, true cash value is $100,000, state equalized value is $50,000. And this is the main point to take away from Headley. The Headley Amendment requires a rollback of property tax rates in a local unit of government where the growth of state equalized value, SEV, exceeds the growth of inflation. Inflation is measured by the Consumer Price Index, CPI. So in very simplistic terms, as SEV increases, as property values increases, through the rollback process in Headley, the tax rates are lowered throughout the entire local unit of government. Move on to Prop A. So Prop A, what that came in place in around the mid-90s. Again, it was voter approved, and it was an overhaul of Michigan's tax and school financing rules found in Michigan statutes. So you have true cash value, you have state equalized value. What Prop A did is create this third category of value called taxable value. So true cash, state equalized, SEV, and then taxable value, TV. And then what Prop A did, it limits the taxable value of real property by capping the increase in the taxable value of property to the rate of inflation, or 5%, whichever is lesser. Now let me talk to you about the rate of inflation. Historically, the last several years it's been quite low. It's been around 0.9 under CPI. Jim, in his report, is going to tell you what it is today. It is substantially higher for year 2018. And he'll explain to you the effect that has on value. So under Prop A, even though taxable value of a particular parcel of property increases at the rate of inflation, the millage rate for the entire community is rolled back as a result of the increase in the total taxable value of the community. The net result is less than inflationary increase in the actual dollars received by property taxes. Again, for the sake of simplicity, this is the overall value in your community of property. You can see when times are good, true cash value going up. You see SEV, because it's half of TCV, it's also going up. But if you look at taxable value and the rule set in Prop A, it remains somewhat flat. Now there is good news, and the good news comes in two different scenarios: uncapping and new construction. And new construction is really good news, and I'll explain to you that in a minute. So both Headley and Prop A limit increases in property taxes for a particular parcel of real property. Taxes, however, may be increased when a parcel is sold or transferred. That's the uncapping. But the bad news is uncapped values are treated as growth on existing property, and they trigger the Headley rollback. So let me just give you what I think is an easy hypothetical to understand. I have a house, my neighbor has a house, they're both relatively same lot size, both same size building, both about the same value. Let's say hypothetically they're assessed at $80,000 true cash value. $80,000. SEV is $40,000. Taxable value is going to be less because of the rules found in Prop A. I sell my house, and let's say hypothetically I sell my house for $100,000. SEV is now $50,000. Taxable value is increased under the uncapping to $50,000 as well. But when you take my parcel and all the other parcels in the community, that increase in value triggers a Headley rollback, which overall decreases the taxes for that particular community. Now, and also, let me say that again. Not just uncapping is a positive, but there is additions. Additions to taxable value, such as newly constructed property, are typically excluded or exempt from the Headley rollback calculation and Prop A's limitations. So go back to my hypothetical. I have my house, it's valued at $80,000. I sell or convey an adjoining empty lot. I sell that to a developer. Developer builds new construction, newer, bigger house, better house. That's valued now at $200,000. SED is $100,000. Taxable value also is $100,000. We don't have to worry about the rollbacks built into Headley and Prop A. So the moral of the story is this: new construction means higher taxable value, which means more revenue for the county. And then Jim will comment on the Equalization Department, what they do, which they're responsible for ensuring that the rules provided under both Headley and Prop A are uniformly applied to all properties throughout the county. And then obviously they have to provide this report annually at a meeting in April. So that is Headley Prop A in a nutshell. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them. If not, I will turn it over to Jim Baker. Thank you very much.
Very good. Thank you.
Jim Baker, Director of Equalization, and thanks, Chris. I appreciate your understanding of the process. It seems as if it's a big wild elephant in a room, and it's hard for people to get their heads around it sometime, and that was very good. I appreciate it. I appreciate the board and their support throughout the process of studying all the units and determining projected true cash values, then working with the local units and to make sure they will digest the true cash value as we have determined, and then come back, and this is what this meeting is for, and to come back assessed at 50% of our true cash value as determined by studies. And I'll make it clear right now that no unit needs a factor this year. All units in all classes came back in the assessed at 50% of true cash value, and that's what this represents. I believe all the materials covered real well in this report. We solicit at any time any updates to this report that would help you feel more comfortable as a board in what we're doing. If there's anything I can add, or if you think there's anything that is excess, I'd be glad to talk to you about it and modify this report in a way that it suits you, because it is your report. What I noticed, and if we look at the taxable and assessed values, right now this report is dealing only with assessed values. Later on, when we have the apportionment report and we report the millages to you for approval in October, that is after the Headley rollback fraction and all those other calculations are done. Those are in very preliminary stages now, and preliminarily, I believe that the county will have a rollback of 0.9963, which is not as severe as last year was. And it was because the rate of inflation was 2.1% this year instead of the 0.9 last year. So that allows more inflationary capping, like Chris said, before you start rolling back. And so while that's good for our taxable value and for our Headley rollback calculation, it's bad for our employees and constituents because they're facing that rate of inflation when they live. So kind of a double-edged sword there. I noticed on this chart that the 2009 taxable value, when I go back to prior charts, that is the highest taxable value before the downturn that the real estate market took. And currently, our taxable value is at about 14.5% higher than that point in time back in 2009. Overall, from year to year, our taxable value is up about 4.9%. We will cover a little more on that later, I believe.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
What's the historical high for taxable value
To this one right here,
This is
over
it?
5 billion, yes.
for all time?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Well, at least in the 20 years I previewed, and I can only presume that it has never been that high before, so.
No, this is the highest.
And then what would be the second highest?
It appears last year was,
Just last year, okay.
Yes.
According to this chart on the right?
yes.
Okay.
And it's page 10 in your paper copy.
Okay.
Might be a different page in your electronic version, but in paper copy, it's page 10.
And when you say inflation this year, 2.1%, what's the calendar year that you're looking at for that, 12 months?
That is the rate of inflation that we apply in the capped value calculation for the 2018 assessment.
Okay. Which months are you counting that in, do you know?
State fiscal
It's a
year.
one-year calculation that
Okay.
is calculated by the state and published annually.
Okay. So January to December, or not?
It's a state fiscal year.
Okay, yes, state fiscal year. So it wasn't a calendar year.
Okay. So October 1st, October 31st?
The state
can-
tax commission publishes a letter, and they do the calculations, and that would be available usually October, November.
Okay.
And that's the first thing we generally tend to look at, just to see where things are headed.
But I can certainly get you the publication and send it to you, but I'm not able to say that off the top of my head right now.
Okay.
Basically, our taxable value puts us, I'm not sure for 18 yet, but for 17, our taxable value puts us 15th highest overall in the state out of 83 counties. That is all I have. Basically, I'm asking you to equalize the assessed values tonight, and the county equalized values as they were assessed by the assessors with no factors for any units, unless there are any questions.
Any questions?
Do you know anything about foreclosures?
The foreclosures are a very small part of the market anymore, if
Yeah.
almost at all.
That's my question, really,
Yep.
because it does affect you.
Yes,
Yeah.
the foreclosures do tend to pull the market down in general, and that's what we see in the middle of that chart is the effect of foreclosures and lots of inventory on the market and that kind of thing.
I can tell you, handling the foreclosures with Heidi Sheppy, going to court with Heidi, when I started here 5 years ago, the number of properties being foreclosed are much higher than they are today. So the trend is certainly encouraging.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the equalization report of 2018.
I'll second that.
Moved by Commissioner Johnson, supported by Commissioner Mayer. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. there
Again,
go.
thank you for your support.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Is there a chance for a second public comment?
I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, Dean has something.
I'll
Sorry
be
about that.
brief. I'll follow up with a few comments on the charts.
Okay.
The first one to your right is the same as what Jim has in the equalization report on page 10. But there's so much that you can take away from this, but I think the one thing that we liked about this was just the stability in the taxable value. I mean, obviously, we had the low point, which if you look at the chart on the left, the effect that it has on tax revenue, but the trend is upward, and also the gap between the equalized value from what Jim has presented, our taxable value, and the report that you just approved actually increased at a rate greater than the the SEV, which is a good thing. And the difference between the blue line or graph and the taxable value, what would that be, orange? We have room to expand or to grow, and that's a good thing. And then if we go to the chart on the left, this is the tax revenue that's realized in your county general fund. It doesn't take into consideration like the road commission or commission on aging. It's just your general fund. And we were trying to show that when we hit the bottom, we wanted to use the same 10-year period of time that Jim had presented in the equalization report. For those from 2009 to 2010, and then again to 2011, those were losses of $750,000 in revenue. That really hurts your operating budget. It's a good thing that we hit the bottom, and what we really wanted to show here is that since then, the trend is upward. No one can predict the future. I can't. I don't think Jim wants to either. But we have a very strong tax base. There's a lot of construction going on. I tend to be maybe more positive than I should be, but there's always a chance that we have, things slow down. Hopefully we don't have a financial market near collapse like we had in 2008 and 2009, which really did have an effect on the next 3 years as far as our tax revenue was concerned. But right now, we are seeing a steady increase in our tax revenue in your main operating fund, and that's very, very important. The 2018 amount is $24.5 million. That is higher. That's what I'm projecting based on a 4% increase. It will probably be higher than that. I wanted to be conservative. Until we know what the rate rollback is, but I think you'll hit that number, no problem. And that's actually, we're not budgeted that high in the general fund either. We're about $600,000 less than that in your budget, so everything as far as the equalization report, the trends, very favorable at this time. So Jim has always been great to work with, his staff. We were down there today, probably driving them nuts, but whenever we need information or when we get a call from another local unit, we are able to answer their questions. I think the auditors, they're here right now, they're impressed with what information that we can give them. So it is a moving target, but in my opinion, things are moving in the right direction, upward.
Awesome.
Good.
Questions for Dean? Okay, thank you very much. We'll move on to second public comment. You have to come up to the podium, though. We'll let you ask the question.
Gordy LaPointe, Acme Township. Very interesting, and as a matter of fact, I met with the equalization earlier just to make sure I understood before this, and Dean and I have talked about it. I guess I have a question. I see in the paper these tax abatements and brownfields and TIFs that all certainly have short-term negative impact on revenues for the county, with the anticipation at some future date when they expire, the tax base will be higher and things will be beneficial. So it's at some point in time in the future, it's supposed to be a positive. I guess my question is, do we have any estimates in the near future of when some of these things are going to turn in the favor of more taxes coming to the county for county business versus these other entities? I mean, that's the whole scheme of these things, is that short term, the local, the county or whoever loses, they lose revenue, but they're going to more than make it up at some point in the future. Is anybody looking at what is the future and what are we supposed to get this money back? So it's my only common question that needs to be dialed into all of this to really know what what the projections are in the hopefully not too distant future. Thank you.
Dean, do you have any?
Well, just a couple of comments. I don't know how some of the TIFs or the DDAs or the brownfields, if they all have the same end date, but we are required, thanks to the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, we have to disclose in our your annual financial statement, tax abatements, which are tax captured revenues. So the amount of general fund tax revenue that's captured that we don't receive will be a required disclosure. And the county treasurer does have information on what those tax captured amounts are, and I'm pretty certain that we do know. I don't know off the top of my head, but we do have. Recently, we had Copper Ridge within the last few years came back on the tax roll, and then one of the TIFs expired, and we're now collecting on that TIF. But as far as, I do believe everything does have an end date, but I can't tell you if it's 20 years, or I think some of those are established when those tax capture and those abatements are first established.
Thank you. Okay. We've done everything we came to do. So with that, we are adjourned. Thank you,
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, everyone.
everyone. All like
Great
easy
work.
people.